Regional School Committee to order. For those who wish, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation,
indivisible,
under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Sorry, I apologize. I'm not sure if you heard, but one of my kids, I think, just hurt the other one. We do not have any citizens' comments tonight. And normally this would be the part of the meeting where I would explain why I was here and introduce our new members and do the consent agenda. However, tonight we have several outside guests joining us. And so to respect their time and hopefully get them back to their evenings as fast as possible, I want to jump straight into new business if that is okay with everyone. Cool. So we'll begin new business. Our counsel, Kevin Freitag, is here, who is going to explain a vote that we need to take in regarding a legal matter that we need to attend to. So Kevin, I'll let you explain.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the school committee. This is Kevin Freitag. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back before you tonight regarding the matter of Dr. Del Rosario versus the NASHOBA Regional School District. You may recall that at your last meeting, you did authorize the school committee to make a payment in that matter on count 3, which was the public records count in that litigation, which is still ongoing. And I'm back before you tonight to ask you to take a second vote to make a payment of $313.59 on that same matter. That remaining amount is for post-judgment interest calculated from the day that the judgment issued to May 11th. So the plaintiff is entitled to post-judgment interest pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 235, Section 8. So that's why I'm back asking for you to consider that and take a vote to authorize the payment of that amount, which will close out that count, the payment of the judgment on that count of the complaint.
Okay, I will take question and comments, but why don't we start with a motion? Leah, do you have that?
I move to authorize payment of the post-judgment interest on count 3 of Maria Del Rosario versus NRSD, Regional School District et al. Do you need the docket number?
Yeah, go ahead.
Docket number 1885CV01899 in the amount of $313.59.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Sharon. I'll take any questions or comments, but keep in mind this is a legal obligation, so I don't think there's much wiggle room here. Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Attorney Freitag, I just got to ask, because I got to ask, are we paying the post-judgment interest because we're decent-minded school committee, or did they demand post-judgment interest on the judgment amount?
Well, like I said, they're entitled to the amount. I asked that it be waived. The plaintiff's counsel indicated it would not be waived, so that's why I'm asking for it to be paid.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else? Seeing none, I will call the roll. We'll start alphabetically and then I'll rotate through for the rest of the night. So Amy.
Yes.
Brett.
Yes.
Rich.
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Me, yes. Leah.
Yes.
And Shawn.
Okay.
All right, that's 10 yes and 1 abstained. So I believe we are all set. Kevin, do you need anything else from us?
No, thank you very much. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Enjoy your evening. All right, so the next item in new business is actually about the feasibility study agreement with the MSBA. And we also have Peter Mello here. Peter, did you want to explain what this is about? As I understand, it's sort of a formality.
Yes, I think that's a fair characterization. Basically, we're at a juncture of the process where the the school building committee is in the midst of assembling the project team, including the owner's project manager and the design firm, to undertake what's called a feasibility study, which is just a process through which, the options will begin to be vetted, renovation versus rebuild, cost, potential costs of the different options and the like, a really fulsome, comprehensive study. And this is the agreement that the MSBA requires its districts to enter into to govern that process. So it's not really a document that we can, to which we can propose modifications. It's basically etched in stone. It's just, we have to formally take action on it and approve it and authorize its execution and submit it to keep the process moving.
Okay, thanks. Again, with this one, I think let's start with the motion, and then I'll open it up to questions and comments. So Joseph, as you are our everything building committee guy, could you read the motion?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It'd be my pleasure. I'd move to approve and authorize superintendent to execute the proposed Massachusetts School Building Authority MSBA feasibility study agreement between the MSBA and the Nashoba Regional School District pertaining to the potential reconstruction of the existing district high school situated at 12 Green Road, Bolton, Mass. 01740, or the construction of a new district high school. There is some disclaimer language. I'll add that to the motion. The MSBA's grant program is a non-entitlement discretionary program based on need as determined by the MSBA, and any project costs that the Nashoba Regional School District incurs in excess of any grants that may be received from the MSBA shall be the sole responsibility of the Nashoba Regional School District.
All right, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thanks, Steve. And questions or comments on this? Mike.
Yeah, so just to kind of get it out there, the last part of Mr. Gleason's motion was that, and I apologize if I'm paraphrasing, but excess revenue is the sole responsibility of the communities. Just to be clear, the districts have or have not authorized use of those funds should they be needed.
Well, the districts, each of the member municipalities of the district voted to authorize the funding associated with the feasibility study last year. And that language is MSBA required boilerplate. It's actually, technically it's language that the MSBA requires to be included in motions, town meeting motions in particular. But there is a sort of a catch-all phrase in its guidance that says any vote, order, motion connected with the project needs to include this language. So we sort of included that in an abundance of caution.
Yeah, I just to be clear, I wasn't trying to parse out the language. I just wanted, I felt like it probably should be noted that the districts or the communities rather voted on this last year, and that's where this money is going to be going to. So
yeah, no, it's an excellent point. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Leah, did you have a question or comment?
Just really quickly, it said the superintendent to execute this, considering we'll have an interim superintendent. Does that matter?
I think you could, if you like, you could add superintendent or interim superintendent. I think that's prudent. But with that said, the plan is, provided the committee approve the execution, that it would be executed by Brooke tomorrow and submitted tomorrow. So I think we're on pace to get it in, imminently. So it shouldn't be an issue. But if in an excess of caution you want to add reference to interim superintendent, that's fine too.
Okay, it sounds like that's fine, as long as Brooke, you're on top of things, which you always are. Yeah. All right, anything else? Seeing none, I will call the roll again. This time we'll start with Brett.
Yes.
Rich.
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
Mike.
yes.
Mary.
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Me, yes. Leah.
Yes.
And Shawn.
Yes.
And Amy.
Yes.
It's always hard when I have to circle my list back up to the top. All right, thank you, Peter, for joining us this evening.
Thank
So
you.
it looks like we are all set with the MSBA. And
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right, our next item is a big one. I know a lot of people have been highly anticipating this. The superintendent search finalists. We have a lot of information and some actions that we need to take on this. So first I want to thank Dorothy and Mary and the entire screening committee for what I know was a lot of hard work. I saw that calendar. I saw the hours that they put in. And even though it was confidential, I am very confident that those discussions were detailed and thoughtful and just overall well done. I'm very confident in that. So I'm not sure if I'm turning this over to Mary or Dorothy here, but I will let you two take it away.
So I'll start off, and just to echo what you just said, Elaine, I wanted to start off by thanking Dorothy Presser from MASC for her expertise and her professionalism with which she's guided this process so far. And I am well confident that she will continue to guide us all the way to our vote in approving of our new superintendent. I also did want to thank the screening committee. There were 5 nights that we met, and everyone on the screening committee was professional, prepared, and they participated. And I'm sure that the Sharon and Rich, the other school committee members who served too, would agree with me that the school committee owes a debt of gratitude to the screening committee because at the screening committee we have 3 great finalists to present to you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dorothy Presser.
Hey, thank you. And first of all, the screening committee was fantastic and really did everything that Mary said, and they were a wonderful group to work with. So I'm going to just recap a little bit before the big reveal of who the finalists are. Recap a little bit of how we got to tonight. This process actually began last January when you decided to have MASC be your search consultant. When we started out, we set a calendar that included community forums and feedback from a lot of different stakeholders within the community, community, faculty, administration, parents, and so forth. All that feedback was put together into a leadership profile that the school committee looked at, determined how you wanted to advertise for the position. And then the advertising went out. We collected the applications. The screening committee took those applications, took a great deal of thought and effort into deciding who they would invite in to interview as semifinalists, conducted those interviews, and then put a great deal of thought and effort into who they would send forward to you as finalists. So from this point, once we talk about the finalists, there will be site visits to the districts of the finalists. We're still in a virtual world, so those will be virtual site visits where you'll be visiting with people that they work with, work for, and interact with in the course of their jobs to learn more about them. They will come to NASHOBA. They will be in NASHOBA in person. And have an opportunity to stop in at all the different schools to talk with the central office leadership team and to have a faculty forum and a community forum where the community and the faculty get to meet them, and also the opportunity to give the school committee some feedback after they've met them on their thoughts about the different candidates and their ability to be successful for NASHOBA and help lead NASHOBA to success. And then the school committee will also have a final interview with the candidates. And then next week, after all that happens, you're in for a bit of a busy week next week. After all that happens, then you will decide amongst this fine group who you will decide to appoint as your superintendent. So before I move on to who the candidates are and all the details that I have so far about what comes next. Are there any questions? Okay, hearing none. So as Mary said, there are 3 finalists that the screening committee is sending forward to you. The first one is Dr. Beth Choquette. Dr. Choquette is presently the principal of Bridge Street School in Northampton, a school which serves PK through 5 students. And she has been in that position since 2012. Prior to that, she was the principal of Stanford Elementary School, which is a pre-K through 8 school in Windsor, Vermont, where she served from 2006 to 2012. She was a co-founder and co-director of the Windsor Music School, and her classroom experience before she was a principal was as an elementary music teacher. Dr. Choquette holds her doctorate from the Boston College Lynch School of Education in Educational Leadership. She also has participated in Harvard Graduate School of Education summer programs. She has a Certificate of Advanced Graduate Studies from Mass College of Liberal Arts, a Certificate of Educational Leadership from the Leadership Academy in the Berkshires. She also has a Master's of Music from Michigan State, and her bachelor's is from SUNY Potsdam. One of the things, just in case you are madly scrambling to write notes, you will be getting all this information later. So you can just sit back and listen. Your second finalist is Mr. Kirk Downing. He is currently the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching, Learning, and Innovation in the Natick Public Schools, where he has been from 2018 until now. Prior to that, he was principal of the Brown Elementary School in Natick from 2010 to 2018. And prior to that, he was the principal of the Chickering Elementary School, the assistant principal of the Chickering Elementary School in Dover from 2007 to 2010. He was also an assistant principal at the Sunrise Elementary School in Aurora, Colorado, and his teaching experiences as an elementary teacher in Aurora. He is currently doing a superintendent internship with Dr. Anna Nolan, who is the superintendent of the Natick Public Schools. He has a Master of Education in Curriculum and Instruction from the University of Colorado at Boulder, and a Bachelor of Arts in History. Last name might sound a little bit familiar to you. It is Mr. Jeremy Roche, who is currently the principal of Fitchburg High School, where he's been since 2011. And prior to that was the principal of NASHOBA High School, where he was from 2007 to 2011. Prior to that, he was also the assistant principal in NASHOBA from 1999 to 2007. He was also an English teacher in NASHOBA from 96 to 99, and also an English teacher at Marshfield High School. He has a master's in education from Worcester State in leadership in education administration, and his Bachelor of Arts is from Fitchburg College, major in English and a minor in Spanish. So that's an overview of the 3 finalists for the position. As I said, you will be getting their resumes. I will also, at the end of our meeting tonight, I will be sending an email to the school committee with a bunch of information, including the full packet of the full application packet of the 3 finalists. The resumes are public documents, and Alita already has a copy of the resumes of all the finalists. The full application package is considered personnel documents, so those application packages are confidential for the school committee. You will be getting also a guide to developing questions for interviews, a site visit guide to give you some idea of thinking about the site visits that you'll have to the candidates district. And I will also send you the list of questions that the screening committee asked of the semifinalist candidates. Doesn't mean you can't ask those questions again when you're interviewing them, but it just gives you an idea of what the screening committee has already talked to the candidates about, and how the answers that they gave that got them to the point we're at now. So next week, there will be site visits in 2 directions on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. School committee members will be able to visit Natick, Fitchburg, and Northampton. I will also have the schedules for those days to send to you. And think about this a little bit. These are virtual visits, which means you don't have to drive to Northampton for one thing. Also, because they're virtual, and because you'll be talking, excuse me, to different groups throughout the day, if you can't attend the whole day, but you can attend part of it, that's an opportunity that's available to you because we're doing this virtually that wouldn't necessarily be available to you if you were driving to all these different districts. Just keep in mind that you are essentially guests of the district on these days. The candidates are pulling together people to talk to you from their workload of the day. We all know it's a particularly busy time. So just be cognizant of the fact that they've pulled this together quickly for you, and they're doing the best job they can to pull together a group of people for you to talk to have conversations with about the candidate. We find that these site visits tend to be more conversations with the different groups than sort of an interview with the different group. It's a chance for some more informal interaction than an interviewing a group of people about the candidate. So just so that you know, the site visit to Natick is on Monday, the 24th. And the superintendent in Natick actually had a very busy schedule and has asked, that's the email that got you saying that one visit was going to be Friday at 2 o'clock, this coming Friday at 2 o'clock. That's the site visit with the superintendent in Natick. And then on the 25th, the site visit is to Fitchburg. Just to go back, the site visit to Natick will start at 8:15. That's the first person to talk to. The site visit in Fitchburg will actually start at 7:30 with a visit with the superintendent there, who also has a very busy day and is squeezing this in. And then the 26th is the visit to Northampton, which will start at 9 o'clock. And then the visits to NASHOBA will be, Beth Choquette will be visiting on Monday, the 24th, Kirk Downing on Tuesday, the 25th, and Jeremy Roche on Wednesday, the 26th. All those visits will culminate with the interview with the school committee in the evening. And there will also be, after school, a chance for the faculty to have a meet and greet, and later in the evening or in the late afternoon, a chance for a community meet and greet. Any questions before? That was a lot. Any questions up until this point? Mary.
Dorothy, I just want to clarify that those faculty and community meet and greet are conducted virtually. So people don't have to worry about getting there, just getting online.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know. Yes, I see Leah's hand.
Hi, Dorothy, thanks for that. I wonder, you said that we were going to get all the documentation later. We'll also get a schedule?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I didn't think you wanted me to read the whole day schedule to you at the meeting. So yes, you will get the schedule. You will get the schedule. I have the schedule for the 3 days. There may be some additional information. You know, they may have a block for teachers and you'll get the additional information of the names of the teachers or things like that. But the time, certainly the start and end time and the block of who you'll be talking to when, I will be sending later.
Later tonight or tomorrow?
Yeah, later tonight.
Okay.
Later tonight. So the other thing is, oh, I'm sorry, Amy, I didn't see.
That's okay. Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned that there would be an opportunity to, how will feedback from staff and faculty be shared with the school committee?
So we will send out a link for a SurveyMonkey, a SurveyMonkey feedback form. And I will make sure that the school committee gets that information prior to Thursday night when you'll be deliberating. So at each of the forums at the end, we put the link for the document into the chat box so people can pick it up. And I'll also make sure Alita has the link if anyone is missed it in the chat box and is asking for it. Mary.
So I just want to emphasize a point that you made, Dorothy, that for school committee on the virtual site visits, as Dorothy said, if you're not able to be there the 3 days, that's okay. If you're not able to be there for the whole day on one of those days, that's all right too, because this is a different process, conversational. So it might be that somebody has a little free time. You look at the schedule, you line it up, and anytime you can be there is great. We don't have to have the same people at all three or the same number at all three.
Yeah, so what will happen is the people that are on, when you have the evening where you're deliberating, the people who went to the site visits will share their observations and impressions and summaries of the site visits. So you'll have that information before your deliberation. So the next big ask of all of you is that during the interview of the superintendent, during the interviews of the finalists, there's a core set of questions that are asked of all the finalists. And then there's always the opportunity for follow-up or other questions that might be particular to a certain candidate. So generally what we do, because actually putting together the interview questions is not a matter for executive session, is that people send me 3 questions that they would like asked. Keep in mind, and I'll send this also, keep in mind the criteria of who you're looking for that came from the brochure. And I'll include the brochure in that email that I'm sending to all of you as well. So 3 questions that you would like to ask, and I will put together, I can do it. For the screening committee, it was great to have Mary there as, someone who is a little bit more familiar with the committee and knew what would be important. If the school committee is amenable to having Mary help me put those questions together, or Elaine or whoever, that would be really helpful to me. But if you could all send me 3 questions that you'd like to ask, and as I said, I'll also be sending you the questions that were asked of the candidates already, as well as a guide for developing questions. If you could get your 3 questions to me by noon on Friday, that would be really helpful. And we will put together some core questions, get them back to you before Monday so that you have a chance to know the questions that are being asked and think about that along with the candidate. The one thing that has not been talked about yet is the length of the interview. Generally, we think it's fair for all the candidates to sort of set an interview time so that they're getting about an equal amount of time. It doesn't have to be down to the minute, but a length of time that we expect the interview to last, so they have somewhat of an equivalent time to speak with you. The screening committee interviews lasted 75 minutes, thereabouts. I guess I'm thinking that at least 75 minutes or maybe 90 minutes. This is a big decision. You want a chance to have a good conversation with the people, would be a reasonable amount of time. So some feedback from the committee on that would be helpful. Leah.
Dorothy, how many questions are typically, do we slate for this? Like how many boilerplate ones are there? And then how many more do you like to add?
So generally the ones that are added are not preset. Those are ones that come up during the course of the interview. So I would say probably we're talking in the range of 12 to 14 questions to ask that are boilerplate. And then the chair, as the chair of the meeting, the moderator of the interview, like any other time during a meeting, if you have a follow-up, if you have something else you'd like to ask, you ask the chair, for permission to ask the question. And the chair is sort of watching the time and determining, do we wait to the end, or do we go forward with a follow-up or an additional question now? The candidates are also generally invited to have an opening statement before you dive into the question to introduce themselves a little bit. and a closing statement, and perhaps a chance to ask a couple questions of the committee.
I think Amy has a question.
Okay, and I see Joe's hand too, I think.
Okay, thank you. My question, I'm just trying to understand the process a little bit more. So you've asked us to each email you 3 questions. You and the chair of the school committee are going to review those and consolidate them into the 12 to 14 boilerplate questions?
Correct. I mean, generally what happens is if you all send me 3 questions, there's going to be duplicates, or
Yeah.
there's going to be themes that come through that a lot of people are interested in. And maybe one of those questions captures the whole theme, or maybe the question gets sort of edited to reflect a couple of related themes. So that's how we come up with the slate of questions to ask.
Okay. And just to give you feedback on the timing, are we able to give a range? Because we have 11 members, and I would, if we set a 75-minute range for the interview and find we need more, are we bound?
Oh, no, you're not bound. No, it's just an effort to sort of A, know how many questions to ask, to B, it would be somewhat unfair to say we're giving you 90 minutes and then give someone else 180 because
Yeah.
they are, you know what I mean? So it's more to just sort of set you're absolutely not bound, but it's an effort to sort of make sure that things move along without getting too bogged down. Joe, I think I saw your hand too. Did I?
Yes, Dorothy, thank you. I'll just preface my question by saying that since this process started, I've been somewhat confused by this particular aspect of the interview process and the vetting of the questions. And I will just further preface this by saying that, and of course, nobody really cares, but this is the 3rd superintendent that I participated in hiring. In the previous 2 interview process that I was involved with, we had a smaller committee, but the process was that each committee member had an opportunity to ask at least one question of the interviewee. So I'm a little bit confused in this regard, because if I'm hearing you correctly, we're going to be submitting 3 questions, and these questions will then be vetted by yourself and the chair, and a group of questions will be then put together and compiled to be posed to the interviewees. But as far as the individual members are concerned, and I echo Ms. Cohen's sentiment. We have 11. I know it's a little unrangeley at times, but what assurances is there, and if there's none, I guess there's not going to be any, that each member will have that one opportunity to inquire of the interviewee? So this is what we usually do, but we can alter that if you want. Let me preface it with that. So generally in those 3 questions, I'm looking to find one that there's a question or from everybody, right? That everybody can sort of look at the questions that come out and say, oh yeah, that was my question. Does that make sense? Mary, go ahead.
So if I could just talk a little bit about the process with the screening committee. So similar process, 3 questions from each person. And Dorothy takes those questions, and as you can imagine, there's a certain amount of convergence. There are certain topics, and there's more than one question on that topic. And Dorothy did a very nice job. She's done this before, but very nice job of compiling and finding out, maybe putting 2 parts together of somebody's language, but what is the very best way to answer that question and to phrase that question. And then then I went through it with her, and then we went back, and this is to answer Joe's question, and assigned, at least tentatively, members 2 questions. And as Dorothy said, doing that, thinking that at least one of the 3 questions that the member had submitted would very likely be one of the questions that person would be asking. Then, so this would be Friday afternoon. Dorothy works over the weekends and gets everything to us so that we could take a look. And at that point, if someone wanted to say, wait a second, I really wanted to ask this question, and there could be swaps, nothing will be set in stone, but I had a lot of the questions that people have right now, and I saw how well this process worked. And so I would recommend that we do this. We don't have a chair of the committee, so I'm willing to do this process again. And although we may have a chair for Tuesday and Wednesday, I mean, that would be something that we could think about, but we definitely won't have a chair for Monday. So.
May I maybe just build on what Mary said for a second, Elaine?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Joe, maybe this got lost in here, but these questions get compiled and then the school committee members ask them. So you do ask the person the question. You may not ask them the question that you could probably ask for which question you wanted to ask, I suppose. But like, when I was on the screening committee, there was a list of questions, and then, it was suggested that I ask this one, and I said, okay. So I don't know if that talks to your concerns or anything, but I thought I'd add that detail.
So Joe, do you feel, is your question being answered or not?
It's whatever the will of the committee is, Dorothy, and thank you for asking. But I look at this from more of a representative standpoint, because you're asking for three questions from each of the 11 members. Then there's going to be a vetting process with our representative from Bolton, not from Stow, not from Lancaster, and our outside consultant, not a resident of the district. And this process that you're proposing is somewhat foreign to me, because as I said, in the previous superintendent interviews, each representative was granted at least one question to pose to that individual. So it's just a little bit confusing to me at this point that the things have changed so much since I did the last interview. And my fear is that somewhere along the line, some of us, maybe one of us is going to get lost in the shuffle, and they're not going to be able to ask that question. And I understand the screening committee went through this process, but ultimately the decision lies with this committee. And each of us has an individual vote, and each of us has to, search our own conscience as to what we think is best for our district. So I'm just having a hard time getting my head around the concept of having the questions vetted and then, distributed amongst the committee members. Whereas, as I said, in the past, each member was permitted to ask their own question in accordance with what they felt was appropriate in the situation.
Mary, go ahead.
Okay, so I just have a question, if it's okay, for Joe. So it would seem that, Joe, that there'd have to be some kind of, and it's not so much a vetting, it's more compiling, like there are categories, but if each of us has his or her own question, and we're not going to be able to talk about it in public session, how do we know that there won't be redundancy in those questions? And also I have a two-part question. And then, so there'd be 33 questions. Believe me, each of us could never ask 3 questions in this amount of time. We'd need like 4 hours. So
I'm not suggesting we get 3 questions. I'm saying minimally, each elected representative should be permitted minimally 1 question, and not to be vetted by, with all due respect, Dr. McCarthy, from an individual who doesn't reside in my community or from an outside consultant. Again, but it's the will of the committee. That would be my preference in this regard, but it's the will of the committee at this point.
I saw Steve's hand and I saw Sharon's hand, and I think I see Amy's hand. Steve.
Okay. How will the community be notified about their public forums? How are we going to broadcast that to the communities?
I think Alita has that answer.
Yeah.
Well, school messenger to the families, and I will try to reach out to the town clerks to send the Zoom link there to see if they can push it out to their senior councils and whatever councils they have. And then also the faculty will be done through district email.
Thank you.
We also
Sharon.
have the website too that we built.
Sharon, go ahead.
So I think what's a little bit confusing is the idea of vetting the questions, because my experience with this process was that it wasn't vetting the questions, it was consolidating and looking for themes to make sure that all of the themes that, so this was on the screening committee, all of the themes that people were thinking about and wanting to be sure to ask among all of the members of the screening committee were included in that interview somewhere. And by consolidating the questions and kind of grouping them together by theme and making sure that they were very concise and they really asked specifically for the information that people were looking for, then we were able to cover, in that case, 14 different topics through 14 questions. Because we knew ahead of time, we were able to ahead of time look at what the themes were and what it was that people were really getting or wanting to get to. So it's not really, I don't see it as about vetting the questions as much as it is making sure that every idea and every theme that people are looking at in terms of wanting information is included.
I thought Amy had another, I thought I saw Amy's hand before I saw Rich's. Amy, did you have your hand up?
Well, I mean, I can see both sides of this issue. I see the benefit in consolidating questions to make sure we're covering all of the issues and we're avoiding repetition. But I also see Joe's point about each committee member being given an opportunity to ask something that might be specific to their town or their constituency, or just a concern they have, because each of us is being asked to take a vote. So I just wondered if there's a compromise out there somewhere, you know, where the questions are submitted ahead of time, they're consolidated into 11 questions since we have 11 members, and then an opportunity is given to school committee members who may want to ask a follow-up or an additional question.
There's always an opportunity for follow-up or additional questions. This is a core set of questions that more can be asked. A possible, I mean, this is totally up to the committee. Another opportunity would be if everybody has 5 questions prepared, and then everybody gets to ask one question. Then if you have, you know, if it's your turn and someone's already asked your question, then you can move on to your second choice question. That's maybe another way to make everyone feel like they got to ask the question that they wanted to ask. I do ask, when you're thinking about the questions that you want to ask, to go back to how you advertise the position and what you were looking for. And what we want to do is make sure that, you know, you sort of define, this is who we're looking for in a superintendent. You want to be able in those interviews to find out which person best fits who you think is going to A, be successful, and B, help NASHOBA be successful once they're here. So I don't, you know, that's another alternative. Rich, go ahead.
That's fine. I mean, perhaps what we could do, I think I share some of the sentiment that Joe has of like data going in somewhere and being processed and handed back. So perhaps when you consolidate the questions, you could list all of the questions that were submitted by person, and then the members can review them and see if they, you know, I don't think that question that was consolidated fits really what I wanted to ask. So I'm still going to ask it. So I don't know, Joe, if that feels like a compromise that you're willing to live with, if you can still ask an additional question after these core questions are asked. But I think I'd like to see what everybody else wanted to ask. And that's one thing I wish had happened on the screening committee, but you know, I trust Mary and Dorothy, and I think it worked out fine. But if I had my druthers, I would have seen all the questions that were requested to be answered.
Elaine?
Dorothy, is there even an opportunity to do that? Because wouldn't this need to be reviewed then again in open session? Is there a way to both consolidate, but also give the school committee a chance to review the consolidation in enough time before these interviews even start?
But there'd be I think what Rich is saying is when the school committee gets that core set of questions, that they also get the list of questions that came from everyone. That would be information given to you. Then if you wanted to discuss that, you would have to do it before the first interview.
But you don't actually have to discuss it. So let's just say, for example, Joe submitted his questions. He finds that the question that was consolidated didn't fit what he liked, or he wanted to give some other feedback. He could just email back Dorothy directly. And that is not a problem as far as I understand in terms of a meeting law, because it's consolidated by an administrative person.
Yep. Leah?
I think that just by virtue of allowing additional questions, it's kind of the best of both worlds. I appreciate the consolidation because I just think that process is efficient. And then to allow for additional questions to be asked if things weren't covered, I think that that's a great compromise.
Yeah, I think, a lot of times interview committees think, well, we have these questions, we have to ask the same question of everybody. We can't, the word has to be the same, almost like it has to be in lockstep. That's not true. You can ask different questions of different candidates. The rationale behind the core set is so that basically for each candidate, you're getting a basic set of information that's the same set of information for all the candidates. And then, if we have 11 questions and you allow 90 minutes plus for the interview, there will be plenty of time for follow-up questions. Joe, have we made you feel any more comfortable?
Dorothy, I'm comfortable whatever the committee wants to do. But you'll have to forgive me that in my prior experience, the questions were not pre-presented, they were not vetted. We were simply asked by the chair to pose your question. And as you pointed out, we had several different candidates from several different school districts from around the country, and you were able to craft the questions specifically to, where they're coming from or what they had done in their work experience and what have you. So, whatever the committee wants to do is fine.
Elaine, somehow I think we need to get a sense of the committee.
Okay, you want to just go through and poll everyone? This isn't something that we would need to officially vote on.
No, I don't think you need to officially vote, but.
Okay, so
can I ask Joe one more question? So when you did that, was there any sense of people being claiming or being assigned, or any thought to what are the topics the questions were going to cover?
No, and again, this was back in the 90s, so we did things differently 30 years ago, but the chair simply asked each member of our 7-member committee, pose your question. That's how we did it. And maybe things have changed a lot in 30 years, so.
Mary and Sharon.
Okay, so things probably have changed, Joe. And we've hired a consultant, and she is really good at, because she has a lot of experience in these searches and in questions. And there is somewhat of an art to really being able to focus a question on what you're trying to get as an answer. And so I'd really like to be able to use Dorothy's experience and expertise to help us, because we only get one night in the interview process with each candidate. And so the more comprehensive that can be with the core questions, and if each one will have at least one question, and then with the follow-up questions, I really think that can work well. I just want to say one more thing. Everybody knows that this is going to be in person with the candidates. I just wanted to, this is a break for all of us from our Zooming. And but the only way that we can do that is that our audience will be it'll be live streamed, but we will be there in person with our prospective new superintendent, whichever one it is.
So I saw Sharon, and then I saw Mike, and then I saw Amy. So Sharon, go ahead.
I was just going to say, having just been part of this process last week, one thing that is helpful about asking the same core questions to each candidate is that you then have the candidate's response on each of those different topics that you covered. And those were all topics that we had considered to be very important based on the feedback that we had already gotten from this committee and from the community. And so those topics were topics that were of importance, had already been decided that were of importance to us. And then we got to hear each candidate that interviewed, hear what their perspective was or what they could share about related to that topic. So then you really had a good understanding from each different person what their thoughts were and what their experiences were and what their values were around each of those different topics. And I thought that was really a helpful thing.
Mike.
Yeah, before I ask my question, I just wanted to clarify, Mary, I believe you said that the in-person interviews between the school committee and the candidates will be streamed. Is that right, and recorded? Okay, so I guess my question, and this, I apologize, Mr. Gleason, this deviates a little bit from your concern, but because they're being live streamed, doesn't that put the first candidate in a considerable disadvantage? Because the two later candidates could always view the live stream and prepare for the questions.
Well, the same is generally true. I mean, these are generally over cable TV when they're, I mean, this. So in general, it's considered, first of all, bad form to sit in on the interview of your competition. Secondly, I mean, it's something that essentially is always available. Someone could always say, hey, could you, if they know someone in the district, could you write down the questions for me? Or, and these are all questions in general. These are questions that are about experience and philosophy, and they should know the information without feeling like they have to get the questions in advance.
Okay. Fair point.
Amy.
Yeah, my question had to do with something Mary said about there not being a chair for the Monday, for the meeting on the 24th. That confused me because I thought that the process that had been laid out involved having a meeting right before the first interview to elect the chair. Is that still the plan?
Yeah, so it's on our agenda later on this evening. We have to decide when that reorganization meeting would be. And we talked about it last week that it would make a lot of sense to do it Monday night. It doesn't have to be Monday night before the interview, but there are some logical reasons why it might be. But even if it is, you're not giving your chair very much time to think through how to moderate an interview or work on any of that. My personal suggestion would be to let Mary take that role because she's been working with the screening committee, and I think it would provide some continuity. But I think that's also something we can discuss later on once we pick a meeting date and time. If she's willing, of course.
I'm willing if it's the will of the committee.
So it seems to me that there are a couple options. One is everybody submit their 3 questions, consolidate the questions, get that back to the committee along with the list of questions that everybody submitted. The other is everybody come to the interview with 5 questions to ask. And if they get to, if it's your turn to ask and your question has been asked, you've got other ones to pick from. I really, I understand Joe's look at, these candidates come from different backgrounds and wanting to ask specific questions about the backgrounds. I'm just thinking there's 11 of you. If we have 11 core questions and allow an hour and a half, give or take, for the interview so that there's time for that core set, I think that's important to have. And then the ability to ask questions specific to the candidate or delve in more to a question that they ask. So I guess what I'm saying is if you decide everybody comes with 5 questions to ask, that whatever question you ask is asked of all 3 candidates, at least the initial go around. So you develop, essentially you're developing that core set as you go the first night. So that got a little long-winded. So it seems to me the choices are either consolidate the questions ahead of time, but let everybody know everybody's question, or come to the interview without anyone knowing what anyone else is going to ask. Leah.
So just one really quick clarification. What I see as a disadvantage of the bringing the 5 questions is that my third question might be really essential, but I might not be able to get to it because of time constraint. And so I like the idea of the consolidation.
Yeah, when I say come with 5 questions, everybody's still only going to get to ask one question, at least initially, right. And then the others.
And so yeah. I might get to 2 questions. And so we've kind of failed to use you as a consolidator who can make sure that the third priority question gets absorbed by somebody else's first question or combined with. And gotcha. So that's why when I've sat in on interview committees for other administrators in the district, and that is what we did in those interviews. And it seemed to work really well in my mind because all of the really the prioritized items all got asked. And then we were all given an opportunity to ask either a follow-up or something that was tangential or something that was spurred on by what was being said in the interview. I really do like the idea of that consolidation process because like Mary said, we use your expertise to conduct that process. And that way, even a third question of mine is going to be somehow pushed into the interview.
All right. Is anybody that hasn't said anything wanted to share an opinion or which option they're sort of leaning to? So I think I have a read on, I don't know, 5 or 6 of you at least by now, but. All right. Should I have people hold up a 1 or a 2?
That might be the quickest way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one is submit and consolidate and let everybody know, and the other would be come with 5 questions to ask.
All right. We have 2 people with their cameras off right now, but it still looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got a majority with 1. Not unanimous, certainly, but we do have a majority with the first option of consolidating the questions.
And feel free, I mean, when you send your questions, I say 3. I know people sometimes count liberally. If there's one that's really important to you, feel free, please, absolutely feel free to say this, to me, this is like the prime question. Joe, you're turning on you're unmuting yourself, so I don't know if you had a comment too.
Oh, yeah, I just got to ask a question, and it's more of a mechanical question than anything else. So I'm a big believer in adhering to the majority will of the committee. So what the committee wants to go with option 1, then option 1 we shall go with. But the question I have is that you wanted these questions posed, or you wanted these questions submitted, excuse me, by Friday, but the site visits aren't until next week. So you go to the site visits, you're going to meet with people, you're going to talk to people. Wouldn't you want to be able to formulate a question at that time regarding what you've heard at the site visit and then to pose to the candidate later that evening? Well,
that's where the follow-ups and the additional questions come in. But if the first interview is Monday night,
Yeah, your interview on Monday night, you won't meet the candidate at their district until Wednesday. So you're going to have uneven information anyway. Like that candidate will come to NASHOBA. Yes, you'll have some information, but it's going to be very uneven across the 3 different candidates.
That was a little bit of the reason we were hoping to take advantage of the efficiency of the screening committee, but that turned out not to be the best idea we had. So, any other questions for me about process, about anything? Leah?
Have we settled on 90 minutes? Or I would suggest we settle on 90 minutes if we haven't.
I'm in favor of 90 minutes as well.
I honestly, you know, the screening committee interviews lasted 75 minutes. Obviously, you know, we didn't cut them off at 75. If they were on their way to finishing up, they finished up. I would do the same thing with 90 minutes. 90 minutes is more sort of what we're trying to fit within. If it goes longer than that, that's at the will of the committee. It's just, again, the setting the table of expectations and trying to make sure that there is a relatively equivalent amount of time that you're giving to each candidate.
Elaine, would you like a motion on that?
I don't think that we actually need one. We do have to officially put some meetings on the calendar, but we can do that in a bunch once we know what our reorg meeting date and time is going to be.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is if the screening committee interview was 75 minutes, I would say don't make it shorter than 90 minutes when you're having the last interview and the opportunity, because you want, again, that opportunity for some give and take and so forth.
Okay. Any last questions? We have Dorothy here. So if there's anything you wanted to ask her, now is the time. All right, seeing none. Thank you, Dorothy and Mary and the screening committee. And I'm going to thank the school committee in advance for the amount of time that they are about to give to the continuation of this process. I think we've got 3 great candidates just from the introductions that we got. There's a lot to look forward to and a lot to be excited about.
You know, I sometimes I'm glad I don't have to make a decision.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Dorothy. Have a good night. And sure we'll all be talking shortly.
Yes. Yeah. And expect later tonight. I have a few more things to put together before I send it off, but I will get I may send the email to Mary to forward on because I'm not sure I have everybody's addresses, or I may send it to Alita to forward on, but I will get the information to you and it will be then sent out, or get the information to someone who will then make sure that it gets to you as expeditiously as possible.
Okay. You can always use NRSC at nrsd.net. That goes to everybody.
Okay, you got it. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
All right, so moving on, our next order of business involves the high school. And we have Principal Cullinane here with us this evening. Thanks for your patience, Principal Cullinane, with an adjustment request for the calendar for what is remaining of this school year, which isn't much.
It's really the 3 days before the final day. We normally have a late start on those 3 days because we have final exams and it gives the kids a little bit more time to study for the final exams. We're not doing final exams this year. We're just having final projects and final turn-in type stuff. So we're looking to change those late starts to early releases instead of them coming in late. They leave at 11:30 and would give them a bag lunch on the way out the door. It just made more sense. So that's what I'm asking for.
Okay. We start with a motion and then we'll take questions and comments.
I would like to move to revise the 2020-2021 school year calendar to reflect June 16th, 17th, and 18th as early release days at NRHS and not late starts.
All right, second.
It's actually the 18th, the 21st, and the 22nd.
Yeah.
So I would like to amend that motion.
Thanks.
We'll just restate that.
Okay, so let's move to revise the 2020-2021 school year calendar to reflect June, you said 18th,
18th, 21st, and 22nd.
21st, and 22nd as early release days at NRHS, not late starts.
All right, thanks. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
All right, thanks. Rich, questions or comments? Amy.
The calendar that was posted as meeting materials, I think this is why maybe Leah said the 16th, 17th, and 17th and 18th, because it shows those as the late starts. Like, are we supposed to be looking at the proposed revisions as the calendar that was posted as meeting materials? Because if so, that's not what we have.
I couldn't hear what you were saying, Amy.
I think that, Amy, that's because there have been a couple of snow days this year, and so those days got pushed forward. So when the calendar was originally approved, that obviously doesn't include the snow days that we have during the year. So that's why Steve is proposing those days, because due to snow days, those are the actual final days of the school year for the high school kids.
So the online calendar currently is actually incorrect because of snow days.
Well, it's not necessarily incorrect. We always build in, we always build in the 5, but like we've had less than 5. So it's not that the calendar is incorrect. It's just, we just always move it forward depending upon how many days that we have had in the given year.
Oh, sure. But if somebody goes and looks at the calendar right now, they're going to be confused, right? Just like we were confused.
So
I don't think so, because the calendar explains that in there. It says with 5 snow days, so.
It does.
Right, but it doesn't tell them how many snow days we actually had.
That part's true.
That's
Yeah,
neither here nor there. The date.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding things correctly. I know that's how the calendar works every year, that they post it ahead of time, and then you build in 5 snow days, and the last day can change. It's just that the calendar that's posted on our meeting materials doesn't show the updated last day of school. So I wanted to make sure that was the intent.
Yeah, Leah.
Guys, can you clarify for me, forgive me that I don't know this, the 22nd would then be the final day for the high schoolers, or is the 23rd the last day of school for the district? I do not know this answer.
23rd is the last day of school for the district, I believe.
And so
that's always a half day.
Okay, so there's no need to change that because it's already a half day.
Correct.
So that means that the 18th, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd would all be half days?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, Mike.
Principal Cullinan, happy to support this. I'm just curious as to why the change in the start time is preferable.
We found when the students were taking exams, it was better to let them sleep in and get a little bit more rest because they were up late studying for tests. We're not giving those tests this year, so it doesn't make sense to give them that extra time in the morning. That was the thought process behind it.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Oh, Leah, go ahead.
So I'm just trying to understand, the late start would be, it's typically an hour later, right?
It's around an hour later, yes.
And then the half day would actually, I think that would shrink the day by 2 hours.
It's pretty close to the same thing. It's just the alternative. We would get out at 11:30 or start at 9:30. So 7:30. It's 2 hours for the most part.
Got it. So I think that what I could hear residents ask is, considering how few days they've had in the building, is it necessary to give any half days at all, except for that last one? What is the rationale for half days if they're not taking tests, they're going
to continue with the exam schedule. So their classes will have 2 classes and a study period in the middle of those classes. So there'll be the classes will be longer on those days because they won't see all their classes. So it could be AB on the Friday, CD on the Monday, EF on the Wednesday, Tuesday, and then would have the last class on the G period class on the Wednesday of the half day. And then we have a period where kids can make anything else up that they need to. They shouldn't need to this year, but that's always been the schedule.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, it looks like we don't have any more questions or comments, so I will call the roll. This time we will start with Rich.
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Me, yes. Leah.
Yes.
Shawn.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
And Brett.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Principal
Thank you very
Coleman,
much. Appreciate
it's
it.
always nice to see you. Hang in there. The year's almost done. You're almost done.
Career's almost done, right? Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, moving right along, district improvement plan. So as we all know, nothing this year went according to anyone's plan, but we still have the district improvement plan that needs some updating and extension. So I think I'm turning this over to Dr. McGuire, who's going to walk us through it.
Yeah, thank you. So what we're asking tonight, and Martina Kenyon, our curriculum coordinator for the district, is here too, just to address any questions that you might have as well as we've worked on this. So we're not asking for an approval of the district improvement plan because this district improvement plan was approved 2 years ago. Given that we went into the pandemic in early March of 2020, this district improvement plan was really only in effect from September of 2019 to through February or early March of 2020. So what we're asking for tonight is a year's extension so that we are able to continue to make progress on the goals that are in this improvement plan that was approved by you folks 2 years ago. Because obviously, given that we've been out of school for so long, there are a variety of components in the plan, particularly that have to do with social emotional learning, classroom environments, curriculum, as well as literacy that we still want to focus on, particularly in the area of social emotional learning and coming out of a pandemic and coming out of almost 15 months of not being in school physically 100%. So we're simply just asking for an extension for this year so that we can continue to do that work in the 4 areas and the 4 goals of the improvement plan tonight.
Okay, did you want to walk us through that? Did you want to share your screen or anything like that? Or
yeah, I mean, I can. The district improvement plan, is the same. What we did was we highlighted any areas that we felt like we either needed to tweak or focus on more specifically because of the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic. So I can certainly share my screen. I'm hoping people had a chance to look at it as it was received and sent out last Friday, but it is the same plan with the same exact vision and mission as well as core values. You would notice that in each of the goals, goal one being social emotional learning, anything that is in bold, you will see is just a simple update or a new update because we feel as though we need to address something a little bit more specific in that goal because we've been in the pandemic and because we've been out of school. So for example, we want to identify and offer even more professional development that focus on social emotional learning and equity for students as well as teachers. So you'll see that small little tweak there. And then under benchmarks, you'll also see that our district task force is establishing a strategic plan focused on social emotional learning and promoting equity across the district. And our reopening plans will also incorporate learning from professional development on trauma-informed practices as well. So those are just components that have come up this year that are really essential as we come out of this pandemic and get back into full-time learning. So anything that is not bold was originally in the plan. Anything that is bolded is either just a slight tweak to something or we've just added another component to that. So we are sure that we're hitting all of the areas that we feel like we need to, given where we've been. That second goal of learning environments in structures, under actions, we're looking to design and implement learning spaces that meet the needs of learners for in-person, hybrid, and remote learning models, because we've been there now. So we want to make sure we're always planning for those modes and for those models. Given if we have to go back to one of those models, we'll be able to do that and have the tools by which to do that. And then the benchmarks there, as we look at in the feasibility study, and we look at the goal being learning environments, it's a great opportunity for our high school staff to use the design thinking model to develop their educational programs and looking forward at the educational vision, as well as that school gathering community input to inform educational programming and design. And I know those were conversations that this committee had as we look forward to that educational planning for either a new building or a remodel for our high school. So we wanted to make sure that we included that. In goal 3, in terms of actions, we want to support educators in prioritizing essential grade level learning, particularly where we've been. We want to make sure we're prioritizing those essential standards and benchmarks at each of the grade levels and making sure we understand where kids are currently at. And then in our expected benchmarks there, we continue to look at the social studies curriculum and civic learning, but aligning a new social studies standards with a focus on equity and civic engagement. And that's in the current new standards, and that civic engagement component was in the original district improvement plan. We just made a change there around the equity piece. And then we also want to continue to provide professional development on supporting hybrid and remote learning, and on a deeper learning of essential grade level content and develop that further, should we have to go to that kind of a model in the future. And then with goal 4, around our literacy programs, we've just added and tweaked diverse and inclusive texts as we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's being a major component now really of our social emotional learning, as well as our curriculum. We want to provide and make sure that we are offering diverse and inclusive texts that are identified, incorporated as part of our curriculum development work moving forward, as well as professional development opportunities, as well as coaching and supporting hybrid remote learning, as well as in-person, to incorporate new opportunities for digital literacy, digital learning, and those skills in the use of core digital tools, which we've had tremendous growth already because we've been out in remote and hybrid learning models, but we certainly felt it was essential to add that to the district improvement plan, given where we've been and where we're going. So that's kind of an overview of any sort of updates or tweaks to the district improvement plan, but the core values, vision, and mission remain the same, as well as the 4 goals. We just wanted to make a few changes and ask for at least a year's extension so that we can continue the good work there.
That's a great overview. Thank you, Todd. And
you're welcome.
As much as I never want to experience another pandemic or even a resurgence of this pandemic, I think it would be foolish not to dive into the extraordinary work that the staff and all the students, everyone in the district did this year to figure out how to make education better in the future. Like, we went through all of this. We should take every opportunity to learn from it as we can. So I appreciate that you put in there things about hybrid and remote learning and how we can sort of improve and learn from it and grow from there. So.
Yeah, and I'll thank the team, the teaching and learning team. You know, we certainly meet and we sit down together, and you know, they sit down together to determine, you know, what the level of specificity that we'll need, you know, going into the new year around this. But you'll see, you know, that goal number 1 still remains social emotional learning, because it is going to be a major priority. It is right now with students coming back, and certainly will be as we enter a new school year.
All right, thank you. Once again, I will take the motion first, and then we'll open it up for questions and comments.
I move to adopt the 2019-2022 District Improvement Plan as presented.
In a second.
Second.
All right, Thank you, Sharon. Questions and comments? Mike.
Elaine, you sort of stole my thunder a little bit. Todd, I just want to thank you and the teaching and learning team again. I think if you had come to us today asking for a 1-year extension, that would have been totally understandable. But the fact that you've incorporated what you now have seen potentially as areas to build on or deficits as a direct result of this 1 year plus long experience is really satisfying to see. So just to editorialize a little bit, I think that is really outstanding reflective work, and I'm really pleased to see it. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And again, I'll give kudos to Martina here and the team for really, again, digging into some of that stuff and really doing the work in the schools and with the principals to see, where are we, where do we need to go? What should we continue to focus on? So that, we talk about how hard of a year it was, but a year like this also gives us a chance to really reflect and really dig in to see where do we need to go and figure that out. So thank you for that. But we didn't want to just come and say we need a year's extension. We certainly wanted to figure out, like, with that time, with more level of specificity do we need to add to that? So, and then we'll take a look at it with you folks mid-year to see where we're at, and then again come the end of next year to see the direction that we'll continue to move in. So, and Martina, if you have anything to add too, please feel free. I don't want to steal any of your thunder either.
I think I'll just add that we really felt like this was a great opportunity, and it was so interesting to look again at the district improvement plan, which we developed before our experience over the last year and a half, and then reflect on some of the strengths, actually, in some ways that students and faculty gained, particularly around digital literacy, so that we were really able to think, okay, so we can enhance this in this way and move forward. So I think it's not only about deficits, but also about capitalizing on the maybe unexpected gains at this time.
Absolutely. And thank you for your work too, Martina. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mary.
So Todd, could you go back to goal 3, please? Just, would that be possible? And put it up again. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And so maybe Martina or you could talk a little bit about the middle school social studies, in which I'm very, very gratified to see with the focus on equity and civic engagement. But what I would ask right now is, if high school social studies isn't in here now, is the plan that after this next year that it would be, because there's been a number of people interested and people who have reached out in terms of high school social studies being aligned with curriculum frameworks, as well as having the focus on equity and civic engagement. And we know that there has to be, or there should be, and eventually I guess there will be at least one civic engagement project that will be possible for students on the high school level. So I'm missing high school here. And I just wanted to hear, if we don't put high school in, is your plan that you're going up through the grades, we're in middle school, and then you're going to go to high school?
Martina, do you want to answer that one, or would you want me to?
I can, and then you add to it.
Sure.
So it's interesting that you bring that up. We didn't represent it as a benchmark, but the high school work is actually ongoing. As one example, about half of the department is going to be meeting during our summer academy time to look specifically with an equity lens at their units across the core history, social studies curriculum. And they are already actively working with our humanities curriculum lead, Kim Early, to develop civics projects. So that work is not represented as a benchmark, but it is active and ongoing.
Okay. Martina, I missed the first part of what you said. That's all. I could see that you were talking, and but I couldn't You're too little for me to, to be able to lip read. So what did you say at the very beginning about high school social studies and alignment with curriculum frameworks, which seems as if it would be, kind of a retrograde, step to take. However, from what I've heard, it's necessary.
So I'll briefly summarize that work is active and ongoing, although we didn't represent it as a benchmark.
Okay.
Plan.
All right.
Specifically, they're meeting during Summer Academy to continue some of the work around a civics project and looking at equity within their lessons.
Okay, and I think I might be talking about more than that, about the whole social studies framework. Not that I don't want, and we all know that we should be looking at it through the civic and equity engagement lens. But I just wanted to say this publicly, that it's not just middle school, it's high school too.
Agreed.
With the screen share, I lost my ability to see everyone at once. So there we are. Other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I will go ahead and call the roll. The motion on the table is just to accept the plan as presented. Right now, we'll start with Joseph.
Yes.
Mike.
100%.
Mary.
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Me, yes. Leah.
Yes.
Shawn.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
Brett.
Yes.
And Rich.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much to Martina and Todd. And good luck on executing this for the year.
Thanks. I just want to thank the group for the support. Obviously, it's been a heavy lift to figure out where to go next, and also to dive back to see the work that we've already done and the good work we want to continue to do, but also recognize the need to go in other directions, or to fill gaps that we'll need to do. So the opportunity to continue this work in the next coming year is super helpful, and we'll certainly plan on giving you folks an update mid-year.
Awesome, thank you.
And thank you, Martina, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Martina. To paraphrase a very wise person once said, "Things learned during hard times is never time wasted." So that's where I firmly believe we are at personally, and as a district right now. So onward. And onward to our last item of new business, which is an update from Superintendent Clunchy on what she's been working on, and any loose ends that might need to be tied up before she departs.
Thanks, and I think Alita's going to share the screen here in a minute and bring up the slide deck. So I'm just going to tee it up a little bit. Most of these things I've been reporting out on all year anyway, and so there are no surprises in this, quite frankly. A lot of it ties into goals that we established early on in the year for me, and so this is just kind of tying up just those last little loose ends to make sure that everything is tidied up, and that the work has been completed or is in a good place to finish being completed. So if you can go to the next page, Alita, please. Thanks. So you'll recall early on that we had started to look at the notion of bringing John Doria on board to help support the high school administrative team. And then we decided that we would put it off until we hired a new principal. We would want to report out that new principal spent their first day today on site. So we're thrilled that Kate Boynton was there. So grateful to Steve and his team. Dr. McGuire was very helpful in getting something set up. So she had a great day today. So we're thrilled with that. Dr. McGuire will now take the lead to make sure that the work is ongoing, just exactly as we had laid it out almost 2 years ago, quite frankly, well before the pandemic started. So this is just another one of those situations where just getting back, onboarding again with the work that we had started and we'll see through. Go to the next item. The teaching and learning, as you just heard, one of the things we had said along the way was that we wanted to make sure that we took the opportunity to reflect on practices that worked really well. I really appreciated Martina. I always appreciate everything she brings to the table, but tonight particularly in saying it's not just about the challenges or the gaps, but it's also about the strengths. And there were, in this incredibly dark time, and I know I've said this many times, there were a number of opportunities that we were able to capitalize on. And this ties in with basically what Elaine just said too. I think that this is a great opportunity for us to sit back, reflect, and move forward with things that we know worked really, really well. And so you just heard this number 2, which was one of my goals, just come through with the district improvement plan. The next bullet, please. The NRHS potential project, we have successfully seen that through now, and it's moving into its feasibility piece. It's exciting to know that we've got, the school building committee has been struck. It's had a couple of meetings now. Its work really is outlined now as they move forward into the feasibility mode. We've had Peter Mello come and support some of the discussion again tonight for some of the housekeeping pieces and some of the legal pieces that we're moving in on. I'm so proud of our team and my own work that we did everything in a timely fashion. We had no requests for revisions or anything like that. I'm really proud of the work that we did so that we could successfully get this project to where it is right now. So that goal certainly has been met, and you're ready to move on now to secure an OPM and start to move the project in a different direction. So it's very exciting to see. Next bullet, thank you. The educational profile that is linked to that, we did a lot of work on that. Dr. Jake Foster has reported out once or twice to this committee and the school building committee. We know that that's an ever evolving document, but it's had its initial submission, which we know was certainly a lot more robust than school districts generally put forward. But we did that purposely because we knew that it would give the upcoming phase and the school building committee a good, strong document to work from. So yes, we put a lot more work into it than we had to, but we feel that it's a very robust plan and you can now tweak it moving forward, and it should be a much easier process for you. Next bullet, please. Thank you. The memos and parent communication, I feel really proud of the work that we did in this area throughout, whether it was COVID related, whether it was just the school site-based related. We generally had strategically planned our communications so that very often something would go out from the district level and then something would go out from the school levels that supported it. Intertwined, we all generally worked together on all of that as a collective team so that we were all in agreement and so that all of our memos were in alignment so that we weren't sending mixed messages, that we were always sending a continuous through line of a message. So very proud of the team. I know that this year, somebody like Alita, my goodness, we could not have thanked her more. The number of late nights that we put in on organizing things far outside of our regular school hours. So to everyone who helped support that, Lisa Golbicki, Todd would work on those communications for the Friday and the dashboards. I couldn't begin to tell you the amount of work that was put into communication this year. And still on top of the COVID communication, we were still doing the MSBA and other general communications. So very proud of our team this year for the work that they did in this area. The Mascot Change, we've kept you apprised of that all the way along, so I don't think that there's anything more. I think you'll see we've started some initial work on branding, rebranding, and I think that Tanya and the high school are in a very good place right now. We've laid some nice foundation for them. We've had lots of communication with them, so I think that they're in a very good place as they start to wrap up that process. That was a mammoth undertaking, a lot of meetings, but I think that they did a really good job with the outreach. And so that particular project really is wrapping up. All work that we planned for professional development, bringing Mark Brackett on board and doing the book studies and all of the other work that we had still planned at the beginning with the dip still continued right through. It just took a different medium. And, thrilled to have had Mark Brackett join us all with Zoom. And somehow it didn't even feel kind of Zoomish, to be honest with you. It felt like there was just great interaction. And it was just, I thought, that March date, which is always kind of, and again, that's just something that we've planned in my 5 years here, but that March date has become such a wonderful opportunity for professional growth and connection and tying everything together. And so I'm really excited that in spite of everything, we managed to continue our good, solid work with professional development. And it took such different courses this year. Not only was it the Mark Brackett piece, but you look at those first 10 days, for example, in the school year, as Todd and Martine and the team pulled all of that together. And then all of the trainings we had throughout the year. And it wasn't just with our teaching staff, it was with everything you can imagine, whether it was our custodial staff, learning new techniques for cleaning, all of the trainings that Pat and her office had to do for the different streams of money. And every time they made changes to ESSER grants or we had to revamp something because they'd made a change here and we qualified. All of those things all required professional development. The number of legal sessions that Anne-Marie Stoika and her team had to attend as we went through this, the number of different meetings and sessions that Desi had, that Todd and I had to attend. I mean, the professional development this year, you just couldn't even articulate it all because there was just so much. But we still continued, even in spite of all of the other, to continue the through line for the professional development that was linked to the DIP and the school improvement plans. And I just think that our team and our teachers and our staff in general just deserve so much credit. You even think about that technology, all of the work that Chi and his team had to do. It was just phenomenal. What happened this year for professional development was just simply off the charts for NASHOBA. I'm sure it was for everybody, but it certainly was for NASHOBA. The administrator handbook draft is complete. I'll leave it in my desk drawer for the incoming superintendent. It's a binder and they can work away at it. And it's got great bones. I want to thank Anne-Marie Stoiko, who did so much work on pulling that together as a final document. It's quite extensive, but I think that it will be up to your next superintendent to take a look and see if it meets his or her needs. If they want to add, subtract, or change, that will be up to them. But they've got a good basic structure, a foundational document that they're going to be able to just leave as is or make changes to suit their needs and their leadership style. And the last was just COVID. Even with all the goals in the world, I don't think anything could have prepared any of us for what we were faced with COVID. And I just want to take this opportunity again to thank everyone, whether it's our school committee, our teaching staff, our custodial staff. If you walk through our buildings at a certain time of day and grab a handle, you will stick to it because it has been newly disinfected. And they still do that several times a day. If you grab a handrail, sometimes you'll stick to that too, if it hasn't dried completely. The new things that our custodians learned during this time period was just phenomenal. But, I was talking to Nick today in Stow, and he said, in spite of everything, it was a good year. So that's just a kind of a tie-up of all of the last of the goals. I think we're in a really good place. I think we've done a lot of work to get ready for the next superintendent. It should be a very smooth transition for you. So that's it for me. Any questions? Nope, all good. We're all good then, Elaine. Thank you, everyone.
All right, well, that wraps up our new business. The next item on the agenda is about a reorganizational meeting date vote. If it's okay with the committee, I'd actually like to do the school committee member introductions, which is the first thing on my updates, because I think it will provide some context and lead into a nice recap of where we are with the reorganizational meeting, what happened at our last meeting, what we discussed, and then feed into a decision of what we need to do about it tonight. So with that being said, some of you watching the live stream will have noticed that we have a new school committee member with us tonight, Shawn Winsor from Lancaster. Shawn, welcome, and thank you for joining us. Would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Not unusual for me to be on a committee or a board. I did do my sentence with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health, and then some other smaller committees. But I also served on the Minuteman School Board for a while as well. I've got a student over at Luther Burbank who seems to do pretty well despite the challenges of the school and the environment. As well as I have my degree in education and psychology, and I was formerly a DARE police officer. I was assigned to the schools where they put crayons in my holster, and I was in teaching the 5th and 6th grade. So this is a wonderful opportunity. You're going to notice that I probably talk less than Brett, where I'm just sort of listening more than I'm talking, because I just really want to learn about the speed of the committee. So I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And I know that we have really long meetings and a lot of committee members, so we don't really have time to go around one by one and introduce ourselves to you. But I do hope that once you have a fully seated new committee, whether it's at a workshop or the in-person superintendent interviews or something, that you guys do really take some time to get to know each other, not just as school committee members, but as people. So about 10 days, 2 weeks ago now, all 3 of our towns held their town elections. So we have Shawn from Lancaster. Mike Horish was reelected from Bolton. Congratulations, Mike. Good to have you back. And Karen Devine was actually elected from Stow. However, Stow has a bylaw that says that newly elected board members cannot take their oath of office until after the town meeting concludes. And Stow postponed their town meeting this year until this coming Saturday, May 22nd. So Karen is a member-elect, actually. I believe she's watching tonight, and will be taking the oath of office on Monday, the 24th, in late afternoon, which puts us in a fairly unique position, although I've heard other regional districts across the state are dealing with the same thing right now, where we have some sort of transition period lame duck members. Because your current chair, Kathy Kodian, also rolled off the committee, and I was the vice chair, it sort of left me as a lame duck member, but also chairing this meeting. So with so much going on with the superintendent search, and you've got the MSBA, and you've got COVID regulations changing left and right, it is pretty important that as soon as, or soon after you have a fully seated committee, that you do a reorganizational meeting, which just means you elect a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary for the year, so that you have some continuity, nothing falls through the cracks, things don't get missed. And so last meeting 2 weeks ago, we had discussed doing it Monday evening. So it would literally be like Karen takes her oath of office, there's a reorganizational meeting, there's a superintendent interview right after that. That would be the most expeditious version of a plan. It doesn't have to be that way. Our school committee bylaws say you have 10 days after the last new member takes their oath of office, which would get you to your June 2nd meeting if you really wanted, or anywhere in between. So tonight, though, we do have to make a decision about that, because we have some meetings that would need to be officially added to the calendar. And these are all public meetings, they all have posting requirements. So this is the date that we have to make those decisions and get that up. So does anybody have, so now we're sort of moving back into the unfinished business of the reorganization vote. Does anybody have comments or suggestions or want to pick up where we left off in the discussion last time? All right, Leah.
I do like the idea of having the organizational meeting after Karen is sworn in on the 24th, the evening of the 24th. I understand they're going to try to swear her in sometime around 3 or 4 p.m.
Yeah, I think she told me 4:15.
Okay. And so I wonder, can you clarify the superintendent interview, which falls on the 24th? What are those times?
Well, I think officially we can set the times, but it's been suggested 7 o'clock. Is that right, Mary?
Yes, right.
Okay. And that would be a virtual interview of 90 minutes, thereabouts. Oh, that's the in-person one.
Yes.
90 minutes. So the organizational meeting would perhaps be right prior to that also in person?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
you should be able to do that in 30 minutes. I know this committee does like to give their feedback, and that's important, but you also can't be late to an interview. That would not look well on the district if you were late to your candidate interview. So, Mary.
I too would like to see us vote at 6:30, let's say, on Monday, the 24th, prior to the first interview. I found myself sort of in between, and thank goodness that Elaine, came to our whole committee's rescue tonight. But without a sitting chair, it makes everything really difficult. So and usually an election doesn't take that long. It's usually like, if it were 10 minutes, that would be a long time, but maybe it would be longer. As Elaine said, we all like to have our opinions heard, but certainly I really believe we could do it within the 30 minutes and still be able to begin at 7 o'clock with our first candidate.
All right, other thoughts? Sharon.
You just clarify for me, because I haven't done this before. This reorganizational meeting is simply creating or electing your officers for the next year, and that's really just what it's about. Is that true?
Yep, that's correct. And usually it's just at the first meeting after everyone's elected, and then you go on and do your regular business meeting. So it's not usually a separate thing. It's just the very beginning of your next meeting. But again, nothing this year is going according to plan. So we're doing things a little differently.
Thank you.
Alita.
You actually have to vote on your meeting calendar too, because this is actually the last meeting that it's for the calendar.
Oh, you mean the June 2nd meeting?
No, this meeting right now is the last meeting on the school committee meeting calendar. So the organization meeting is when you plan your whole calendar for the next year, at least for the meetings. You don't have to put on all the subcommittee and all that stuff, but just have so that people in the public know when the next meeting will be, because right now there is no next meeting.
That's a good point. I just sort of assumed that we meet every 2 weeks in perpetuity because that's what it feels like. But the lead is absolutely right, as usual, that every year you have to re-up that calendar and then it gets posted publicly. Steve.
Perhaps we should meet at 6 o'clock, which is our normal meeting time anyway. It gives us an hour to elect and an hour to put together to approve the calendar.
So Alita, I just want to ask you a technical question. Is there any live stream or other technical reason why this reorganizational meeting couldn't also be in person, just like in the same room before the interview?
Yeah, we planned on it being in the same room.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to have, that's going to be the home base for the candidate on Monday. We're going to switch them to another office where you guys meet.
Okay.
And then he can just join you. But yeah, I have the conference room set up. We've worked it out with Rob that you'll have 3 feet of distancing between you. So good to go.
Okay, Sharon, you have a question or comment?
So another question from someone who has no clue what's happening, really. how much detail needs to be in that calendar? Is it just setting the dates for the meetings, or is it detail including other details?
No, your first meeting is really just to set your meeting dates, and actually the dates actually have to follow the warrant schedule, so you don't really have a lot of leeway on your dates because you have to sign the warrants every 2 weeks, and those one hopefully in September will be in person, and you'll be passing the folder around, signing the warrants. So we follow the warrant schedule, so it's every other 2 weeks. So Elaine's right by assuming the next meeting will be June 2nd because that's 2 weeks from now. And then once probably at the June 2nd meeting, the chair will establish the subcommittee people, and then those people will meet and decide their own meeting dates. So it's very quick. It's really just deciding, yep, every other week.
And there's really no discussion about the dates because the dates are predetermined.
Well, there is a discussion if you guys want to change, if for some reason you want to change the meeting day of the week.
Okay.
I mean, since I've been here 15 years, it's been Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, back to Tuesday. It all depends on the preference of the committee.
Thank you.
But it pretty much has to be every other week. And I do up a calendar. I've already done up the calendar to propose to you guys, so.
Of course she has. All right, any other thoughts, questions? All right, so, oh, Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of having the meeting on the 24th at 6 o'clock, just to give us a little bit more of a buffer before the first interview starts, so that whoever is elected chair gets, 30 minutes to get themselves organized.
Okay, so in that case, I'm going to entertain a motion with still more time for questions and comments if you want, to add 4 school committee meetings to the calendar, May 24th at 6 p.m. for school committee reorganization meeting and the first superintendent candidate interview, May 25th, 26th, and 27th at 7 p.m. for superintendent candidate interviews and deliberations. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
All right, thanks, Leah. And just to clarify what I said there, so Monday you would have a reorganization meeting plus interview, Tuesday interview, Wednesday interview, and then Thursday a public meeting to deliberate and make your choice. So that's actually 4 days in a row. All right, so any questions or comments at this period? Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a couple clarifying points. I will forever disagree with our former chair and with the vice chair on the 10-day requirement. I don't believe our bylaws require that. I believe that 10-day requirement is in the regional school agreement, and it's been my position, maybe wrong, that had to do with the actual creation and initial organization of our district committee, because our bylaws talk about 1-year term. The regional school agreement talks about having that meeting within 10 days to establish terms and what have you. But be that as it may, I just want to point out one other thing, that as far as what we do on Monday, if we do vote on that, there's no guarantee that we will actually be able to elect a chair. I mean, you have to have a majority vote to create a chair. There may not be a minority vote. So in that case, we will not be without a chair. Our bylaws do provide that the senior member of the committee would serve as chair pro tem. So we're not ever going to be without a chair in regards to moving forward after the 24th.
Fair enough. Joe, as usual, knows his parliamentary procedure and his policy and the letter of the law better than anyone. Seems like you're in the right profession. All right. Other people, comments, questions? Yeah, Leah.
Did you say that the last night would also be at 7 p.m.? Yes.
That's what's in the motion. But again, that's your meeting and it's a pop-up meeting. So do whatever you want.
No, I like late, so I support that.
All right, if there's nothing further, I will call the roll. This time we will start with Mike.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
Sharon,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
me, yes, Leah,
Yes.
Shawn,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
and Joseph.
Yes.
All right, so Amy, I know you had put together a calendar of dates and times and things. I don't know if Dorothy will send that information out as well in a nice organized way, but if not, I think that your version, maybe you could send that out to everyone again with any updates on it, because it is a lot for everyone to keep straight. I can completely appreciate that.
Yeah, sure. I think I was pretty close.
All right.
Might just have to adjust the meeting time on the 24th to 6 o'clock instead of 6:30.
Okay, and I will reach out to Karen to make sure that she understands all of this and knows what she's getting into.
Elaine, if you would like to delegate that responsibility, feel free to do so.
Okay. You volunteering? I'm happy to volunteer you. All right, thanks, Leah. All right, so then we are bouncing back to other updates for our new members, and maybe you could pass this along to Karen as well, but also to our veteran members who may need to re-up. Charting the course, which is a state mandated educational class for all school committee members to take. It's put on by the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, of which Dorothy Presser is a member of. They have a couple dates coming up in June that are both virtual and in-person options. And so I just wanted to call that out for folks because they don't have them all year. They only come up kind of a few times a year. And so if you want to catch this round, go to masc.org. That's their website. There'll be details about the dates and times there on that.
Elaine, is that something that has to be done? How periodic? I finished mine back in January, I think.
Oh, you should be fine. I think it's like once every 3 years, but it may be even longer than that. I'm not sure. Alita, do you know?
I think it's just once.
Oh, just once period?
Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. Next on our list, all right, I'm shuffling all my papers around. Some final thoughts. I am going to use my discretion as chair of this meeting. If you will indulge me for a couple of minutes. A couple months ago, Mike Horish called me and asked if I would share anything that I've learned during my time on the school committee. And I thought about it a lot. It turns out I actually have a lot to say, but I need some time and some space to get it all down. But tonight, I just wanted to share, I guess, a couple of pieces of advice that I think might be helpful as you all transition to a new school committee, but also to a new superintendent and to a new high school principal. To whomever is your next chair and your vice chair, I wanted to say that most people think that being the chair is about control or is about power. And I suppose it could be that if that's what you make of it. But from what I've seen, the most important ability of the chair is actually to take punches, sometimes unfairly even, but to turn the other cheek. A good chair thinks about doing what's best for the district. And I know that's something that we all do, but they wind up doing a lot of things for the district that most people will never appreciate or even know about. So if you're not ready for a certain level of self-sacrifice and definitely picking your battles, then maybe this isn't the position for you. In a lot of ways, it feels like being a parent. And it also kind of feels like being the committee's therapist, but that is a story for another time. More generally speaking, want to say that it's a lot easier to criticize than it is to create. Create anyways. You will not always be unanimous. That's pretty self-evident. But remember that it takes at least 6 people to pass anything on this committee. And even that is usually after a long process of getting more agreement through subcommittees, outside boards, and such. I always thought it was odd to see our state and national legislators, after they would pass a bill, to just be gushing about the blood, sweat, and tears that went into passing the bill. And after being on school committee, now I totally get it. I totally get it. Just remember that nothing comes easy, but that's by design and it's not personal. And in a related fashion, goodwill accounts for way more than anybody realizes in any organization. It doesn't mean being a yes person, doesn't mean avoiding giving any negative feedback. It means that when you have to tell somebody something that they're not going to want to hear, that they actually hear it and that they don't dismiss you offhand. It means building relationships with people whose life experiences and therefore their perspective can be vastly different than your own. So here's a tip of mine, being practical. One very specific thing that I've done to build relationships in this district is to make it a point to call out when I agree with someone on a comment they've made or a point that they've made, or even if I just had the same question that they asked. It needs to be genuine, make no mistake. Manipulation is a lot easier to spot than most people think. But purposefully finding genuine points of connection, it builds a foundation with even the most unlikely of people. Ask each other questions about each other. We tell our students that curiosity is the key to lifelong learning, but it's also the key to building lasting relationships. And that, in my experience, is the key to a well-functioning and successful school committee. So that's what I wanted to say tonight. Don't really want it to be a discussion, but just things that I've reflected on and that I hope you all will reflect on as well as you move forward through all this transition. But also on that note, I guess I can segue into talking about what I can say is honestly a relationship that before I joined the school committee is not one I ever would have imagined I would have. But I am so grateful to have built over these past 3 years. The job of superintendent is not for the faint of heart. Not to scare away any of our fantastic finalists, because I'm sure they already know this, but it is one of the toughest jobs out there, and I've seen a few. Tonight's Superintendent Clenchy's last regular school committee meeting with us. So I just want to take a minute to thank her for everything she's done over, is it 5 years, 6 years, 5 years. You came in and you cleaned up, sometimes literally, our operations, and you've been a steady hand as we've gone through a lot of change in these past few years. In every conversation I think I've ever had with the superintendent, two things have come up. One is how stubbornly optimistic she is. Like, I don't know if it's the Canadian thing or what it is, but I can't recall a single time, and you all know we've had some rough times, that she didn't offer up a genuine belief that things would be okay, that we would work through things because, and this brings me to the second part, because of her unwavering confidence in our staff, in her team. And she always used the word team, always uses the word team. Her pride in her team permeates everything that she does. And that's why, along with some gifts that I brought over from all of us to remind her of the towns that she's leaving, I came across a piece of wall art with an amazing quote, and I just knew we had to send her off with it. And so I'll share that with you. It said, from Mahatma Gandhi, "The sign of a good leader is not how many followers you have, but how many leaders you create." So the last 2 years in particular have been hard on everyone. There weren't many popular decisions to be made. But I look around now and I certainly see a lot of new leaders ready to take on the mantle. So I thank you for that, Superintendent Clenchy. And I thank you for your knowledge, your loyalty, your dedication and commitment, your energy, your boundless energy. And seriously, she's the district's biggest cheerleader. It really is. And of course, your leadership. So We will miss you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I walk away and I said to Elaine, you know, the pride that I feel, and it was one of the things in an interview I had, somebody said, you have so much pride in NASHOBA. And I said, I do. And I will continue to have that pride. And even as we came on the air tonight, you know, and I was saying to Shawn that I just been at the Lancaster schools this morning, and our team was out there just making sure every weed was pulled and every piece of mulch was just perfect. And I thought, remember when we had, you know, like, lots of weeds. Remember when we had the high school, it was so different than what it looks like now. You know, central office, I mean, remember all the old lockers in central office when you first walked in. Remember the smell. When you know, like all of that, like those basic things are all cleaned up. Fiscally, you're in a great place fiscally, you know, and through all of these incredibly tough times and through all the cuts and through everything else, you're in a solid fiscal place from my perspective. I think your staffing is phenomenal. Your PD is just like, you've got to keep that going, because honestly, I just feel it's one of the strongest in the state right now, if not the strongest. I have so much pride in this district. I have so much pride in the people, in the communities that support it, the parents, the school committee members, the people who took leadership both formally and informally and continued down that positive road when things could have been so dark. And I'm so grateful. I walk away, and I said this to Elaine, you know, when we were chatting, so much more resilient. I thought I was resilient coming in. And I know that I've teased, and Anne Marie would say, we're, you know, this is really a size 2. This is just all extra thick skin where things can just bounce off, you know. And I thought that when she was teasing me one day about that, and I thought, isn't that true? And you know, you learn to kind of go with the, you know, some of the nastiness that comes your way for sure, and you have to. And I think, Elaine, your final thoughts tonight are so spot on. This is a great district, and it is so well poised to go to that next level and continue to do great things for kids. And, you know, I know I've said this before, but I always had a mentor who was a superintendent when I was a principal, and said, if you keep kids at the front of every decision you make, you will never go wrong. And I still have that thinking. Like, I still always, in our conversations with Todd and I, or with our team, with whoever, it's, are we doing the right thing for children? And if we are, we're making the right decision. And so I'm just so proud. I'm proud of the team. You see the team tonight. You see Martina and Kim and all of Todd's people pulling together that dip and reaching out, or the educational profile that we created for the work with MSBA. That was not a small feat. That was enormous. That was pulling in all of our high school staff, and it was just nothing we did was small. So you know what? I walk away proud of the district, proud of the work that the team has done, proud of the work that I have done. And I'm so grateful to the partnership that the school committee has had with the superintendent, because that is so critical. The relationship you have with your superintendent, you can never, which I know that you would never do, but I'm just saying this, you can never take that for granted. And it's like a good marriage. It's just something that you continue to work away at, you know, and build and trust and take to that next level. But I thank you, and I thank the communities for the support, for all of the nastiness I get. I would have to say to all of those, there've been a couple, I know, for example, we got somebody in Stow that just continuously drops me wonderful emails. For all of those people, I thank them for all that positivity. And so to everyone tonight, thank you. It has been a phenomenal time, and I am a grateful superintendent as I leave this district. Thank you for the time and the opportunity. Thank you.
And then like, there's never a good time in a meeting to do that. You know, like you wait till the end, everyone's tired and groggy. but now we have to go back to business.
Back to business.
And the next item on our agenda is the superintendent's report. So we're going to put you back on the spot. After saying nice things, now we're going to ask you a bunch of questions.
That's okay. And actually, Todd's going to take the lead tonight on the superintendent's report. So we're going to Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Perfect. So in the superintendent's report, I just wanted to highlight 3 important components this week. The first being the updated COVID guidance that came out Monday. And this came prior to our commissioner meeting that Brooke and I both attended today. And the running joke was a little bit like the governor's message on Monday came before we all knew that was going to come down. And they spoke about that.
Yeah, we see it coming.
Yeah, they even said that they didn't necessarily see that coming. So, and of course, whenever updated guidance comes, we get a lot of emails and a lot of questions, and we need some time to sift through it, but also want to make sure we get out the accurate information to the communities. So that updated COVID guidance that the governor put out, in that students no longer have to wear masks when outdoors, even if distance cannot be maintained, was sent out this week to all of the communities as well as the faculty. And then, as was effective on May 18th, which was Tuesday, the guidance update applied to recess physical education, youth sports, and outdoor learning environments. Adults must continue to wear masks outdoors if distancing cannot be maintained. That be our teachers. And at this time and for the foreseeable future, adults and students in K through 12 buildings must continue to wear masks indoors. That was the latest guidance. Also effective on Tuesday was youth and amateur sports. They were updated to no longer require face coverings for youth athletes ages 18 and under. And the Athletic Association came out Monday night as well with that announcement while playing outdoor sports. And then the bigger announcement too was that effective May 29th, 2021, all youth and amateur sports restrictions would be lifted, as well as a variety of others in the state. In addition, they also spoke about window fans can be used in windows, but facing outwards to facilitate ventilation.
Whoops, we've got Dorothy Presser's email up there.
I don't think that's me. I'm not sharing this one. I think Alita is sharing. Yeah, there we go. And what we also did was add that the link to the frequently asked questions in there. So the Department of Education always, every couple of weeks, updates their frequently asked questions. And that link is provided there as well on their Department of Ed website. Brooke and I attended the commissioner meeting today. And there certainly were questions around graduation, and they are getting us real specific guidance around that, as well as senior events as well that would be coming out within a matter of a day or two. And I know that the high school put out more specific communication to their families today as it related to senior events as well. So we'll continue to update with any guidance as we get it, as soon as we get it. And we'll continue with our COVID weekly COVID memos that track all positive cases in the districts, as well as contact tracing with that and any close contacts.
I can just add a comment on this too. Kind of typically, as for the entire year, a lot of this messaging that's been coming out has been mixed messaging. And if Lisa was sitting here tonight, she would tell you how frustrated she is, because we get some drop from the CDC, then we get some drop from DESE, some drop from DPA, and it's not always in sync. And so if people are hearing that there's some mixed messaging happening out there, it's because there is. And so I just want to put that out there so that if people are hearing, well, wait a minute, does that apply here? Well, no, because a lot of times what's applicable in K-12 environments is starkly different than other environments. So, and ours right now is in flux. So just to let you know that. Thanks, Tom. Sorry.
No, thank you. The next piece was around MCAS testing. So MCAS testing is well underway in our schools across the district this week. Principals are reporting the testing is going well in their buildings, even as well with our remote learners who are doing MCAS from home. So our technology department has been working with our remote learning academy teachers, as well as all of our administrators in terms of the technology associated with that. So that's been going well, while this year's testing will not result in an impact to our accountability for the district, these test results, when we continue to remind families, will provide fruitful information for schools as well as families in assessing student progress and planning ahead around curriculum, resources, and skill development for all of our students moving forward. You know, they also indicated that the test has been modified this year. It is shortened. So there are some modifications to MCAS testing, but it is going well across the district in schools thus far this week. And we've been around to make sure that that's been facilitated well. And then finally, I'm delighted to report that registration for extended learning for next year is open and back open. And we plan to have our traditional fully operational extended learning program beginning in the fall, as long as the trajectory of the pandemic continues to go in the direction and in the right direction that it continues to do. And as always, we will take our guidance from the state on that information, but we're excited to get the program back up and running for the fall. So registration is open, and Raina Rago is just about ready to give us the registration numbers as well moving forward. So once we have those, we'll be able to share that out. And we're obviously looking at spacing in the buildings and all of the traditional mitigation strategies that we're used to in the past 15 months or so. And those are the three components of the report this week. Any questions we're happy to take.
That's remarkably quiet.
It is.
All right, last
Thank
chance.
you.
Or otherwise, I'm going to move on to Pat's update.
I'd like to just give you a little bit of background on the first thing. We need to reaffirm the certification of the E&D for the fiscal year 21 budget that was voted on 3/11/2020, and for the fiscal year 22 budget voted on 3/10/2021. Back in March of 2020, you approved a budget that included E&D as a revenue source. Due to the COVID, our certification of E&D did not come in until the 3rd of April. So it was a timing thing. And again, this year, we voted our budget and we didn't get our certification until the 5th of May. In speaking with the Department of Local Services, they've requested that we recertify both years, reaffirm the use of E&D in our budgets. It's purely housekeeping at the state level. So there's a vote, a motion.
So I will move to reaffirm the use of $1,220,000 from E&D as a revenue source for the FY21 budget as voted and approved by the school committee on March 11th, 2020.
We have a second for that.
Second.
All right, thanks, Joseph. Any questions or comments on this one? All right, seeing none, we'll call the roll, starting with Mary.
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Me, yes. Leah.
Yes.
Shawn.
Abstain?
Amy.
Yes.
Brett.
Yes.
Rich.
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
And Mike.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Leah, do you want to do the second one as well?
Indeed. So I would also like to move to reaffirm the use of $1,200,000 from E&D as a revenue source for the FY22 budget as voted and approved by the school committee on March 10th, 2021.
All right, do I have a second for that?
Second.
All right, thanks, Joe. Questions or comments on this one? Seeing none, I'll call the roll, starting with Sharon.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Me, yes. Leah.
Yes.
Shawn.
Abstain?
Amy.
Yes.
Brett.
Yes.
Rich.
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
And Mary.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for
Thank
that.
you.
Pat thanks you. The Department of Local Services thanks you. Now we have the March FY21 results of operations.
Alita, can you bring that up for me, please? So this is the month of March, and of course, it seems like it's a little bit old at this point. I'm almost finished with April's, and I can tell you that April really doesn't look much different than March, but I just want to make sure that I have everything accounted for before I present that to the committee. As far as changes, transportation, we're still looking at the numbers there. Substitutes are still trending high. Special education transportation, we still have some of the costs pending. At the high school, it's early to determine what what their final expenditures are going to be with graduation and other events that are happening at the school. And as far as the other two schools, the grant funding at Hale and at Luther Burbank affected the balances that are in place at those schools. Athletics, the costs are still pending. We should have some good numbers in the results of operations for April. And I think that's about it. If anybody has any questions about any particular area, be happy to answer them.
Rich.
I just had one question, Pat. I haven't had an opportunity in the Budget Warrant Committee recently to ask you, but why do we present the data that is, why if you look at the budget versus actual, I would think that this should be a negative number, meaning the 1.183 million. I would think that that would be negative because we haven't spent that that's going to be that represents the amount of money below the budgeted amount of money.
Well, this wouldn't be a negative. This would be money that potentially could be going back into E&D at the end of the year.
Remember, Rich, that we try so hard every year to put back in. You really have to aim to put back into E&D what you've taken the year before.
I'm purely talking about formatting.
Oh, I see.
I find this every time I look at this report, I'm perplexed because I look at it and I say, oh, look, substitute teachers is under budget by 353,000. Then I go and I have to look and say, well, no, it's actually over. So I don't know if this is the standard way that accounting is done for school districts or if this is something that our district does in particular. But if it was me, I would reverse it so that good numbers are negative and bad numbers are positive, right? That because this represents the difference between what was budgeted and what's actually being spent. And therefore, if you're over budget, you'd want to show things over budget as a positive number. And therefore, when you total it at the bottom, it would say negative 1.83 million, which would represent the money that you're actually have not spent yet. It's the difference between the budget and the actual. And so I find this very confusing because you add up all the numbers under the general budget and then onto the total expended and encumbered, and that all makes sense. And then you look at the projected expenditures, and then, which is that should be the difference between the two. So I guess, I don't know, it's just me, perhaps, but every time I look at I could see that I actually have a degree that involves accounting, and I just find it hard to understand this. So
I just want to go back to say this came out of the time period of the forensic audit, Rich. I don't know if we'd said that to you or not before, but that's when this whole process had started. And it was actually the Budget and Warrant Committee at that time that kind of crafted this with Pat and said, this is how we want to see it. Now, moving forward, maybe over the summer, you might want to think about a different approach, which would be absolutely fine. But just to be clear, this was actually generated from school committee members. So I just want to put that out there so that you knew that that's where it came from, working with Pat, 4 years ago, I guess.
Mhm.
So
That's
if
fair.
you want to make
Yeah.
change, if you want to make change, then you should certainly, take that time this summer to take a look at it, because this came in part because we were also looking at that regular ongoing reporting out to school committee, and so it was kind of a broader picture in response to the forensic audit. So yeah, so have a look this summer, and you might want to suggest something different.
Yeah, I'll take a look. I have a lot of suggestions on the reporting that we didn't get to this year, unfortunately. So if anybody has any other questions on that, I have another question related.
I was just going to say, I don't have a degree in accounting, but if you spend less than you budgeted, you got a surplus. And so it makes sense to me the way it's written here. But you guys can do whatever you want over the summer. Amy, did you have your hand up? I just want to take.
I did, but I just wanted to make sure it was kind of related to what Rich was saying, because every time I look at this, I can never remember if it's the bottom line is a surplus or a deficit myself. And so I wanted to confirm, which Pat already did, that we are on track to replenish the 1.2 million in E&D based on these numbers.
Or close. And remember that the other thing I would remind you too is you never know if you're going to be able to replace that or not. And if you had asked us at Christmas time, I think we said this earlier, we weren't so sure we were going to be even close. I think at that point in time, we were around that $200,000 or $1,000 mark, as opposed to where we sit tonight. So yeah, I think that has been our goal. I would encourage that as you move forward, it continues to be your goal.
Yes, maybe we just need to relabel the column to be like surplus then. I don't know.
That too. Yeah, certainly do that too. Yeah,
it's not a criticism of Pat. I figure I'm sure this was developed with a lot of thought in here, but I look at this every time and I'm like,
I think originally when this was developed, they wanted to make sure that it was so that anybody that read this could understand, like the person that didn't have any background in accounting could look at it and say, okay, here's the budget, this is what's been spent and what's encumbered, and this is what they project to spend, and this is the balance that we have left. And if it's negative.
They went through a number of different iterations. Rich, I just want you to know that it wasn't just one iteration and that was it, one and done. They went through a number of different iterations before they landed on this. But there's always room for improvement, of course.
Yeah, I knew it came out of somewhere. I mean, we'll pick it up at another time, but we should make it graphical. Like maybe we could have like a temperature chart that shows like we're going to be under budget or something like that. So, all right, thanks.
Did you have another question, Rich?
I had another question. I don't know if it's appropriate at this time, but I was wondering if Pat could give an update on what's happening with the audit, when the expected management letter might happen. And I know things have gotten behind for different reasons, but I didn't know if it was appropriate to share what's happening.
At this point, the audit, I've submitted everything. They keep coming back with additional questions. The last question I sent to them, I believe, was Thursday. So I would expect it to be any day now. As soon as I have that management letter, I'll let you know.
So they're not good at setting your expectations when they're going to get back to you? That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. It's just another pandemic thing to jump through.
I know, it's frustrating. It's so frustrating for me. I'd like to finish things.
Oh, I know. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and they're kind of in the driver's seat on that one. They got you over a barrel. Any other questions for Pat? All right. Thank you, Pat. We appreciate it. All right, we're on to the consent agenda. Go ahead, Leah.
Got it. So I move to approve the consent agenda of May 19th, 2021, containing the minutes of May 5th, 2021, and the warrants of May 21st, 2021.
Second.
All right, thank you, Steve. Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, I will call the roll, starting with Steve.
Yes.
Me, yes. Leah,
Yes.
Shawn,
Abstain?
Amy,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
and Sharon.
Yes.
All right, thank you all for that. Subcommittee reports, budget and warrant, no report, correct?
Correct.
All right, personnel. Mary, do you have anything that wasn't already covered earlier this evening?
Yes, yes, but it's, so we had on May 7th, the Personnel Subcommittee, namely Kathy Codian and I, met for the last time, and that was her last meeting. We did not have a huge party. However, we had a one item agenda to approve the final minutes, which we did. And that's it. So our last meeting.
Awesome, thank you. Policy, we haven't met, and you guys can approve minutes without me because there's 3 of us, so you guys can handle that. So communication, Mike.
Yeah, so communication subcommittee met last week. Contrary to the last personnel meeting, we did have a party replete with Oreos and ginger ale. We invited Mr. Joseph Gleason, and he shared with us some of his experiences and some feedback in the school building committee. And kind of encouraged a cross-pollination between the community engagement and outreach subcommittee and the communication subcommittee, keeping the public, the stakeholders informed, and involving those stakeholders in the process a little bit more. We did acknowledge that things were sort of still in the infancy stage, and that once a project manager was assigned, we'd have a better sense of what we were looking towards and what might be necessary. Also acknowledging that the configuration of the subcommittees turnover every year. The communication subcommittee might have a brief meeting either at the end of this year or request to be invited to the first communication subcommittee next year in order to kind of pass down the information that we gathered throughout the course of the year, particularly with regards to the new superintendent, so that the new configuration can pick up precisely where we left off, and as it works with the community engagement and outreach subcommittee. So again, we may have a quick meeting in order to kind of hash those details out, or we just might join in on the first communication subcommittee meeting in the summer.
Thank you. That's great. And that's actually a good practice for everyone to, share the information organizationally as things turn over, as they do every year. So Joseph, do you have an update on the school building committee?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I do have an update. A couple of administrative announcements. First and foremost, since we last met on May 10th, the community engagement and outreach subcommittee was put together as going to be chaired by our esteemed Ms. Cohen, and they had an organizational meeting on the 10th. On the 11th, as Mr. Horish did indicate, I did meet with him in regards to sort of a marriage between his communication subcommittee and Ms. Cohen's subcommittee, which will be ably assisted by Ms. Viverito as well. I want to give due credit which credit is due. This idea came from our superintendent, so I don't want to take any credit for coming up with the idea of marrying these two subcommittees, but I think it's a good idea, and I think it's something that is worth pursuing. On a more substantive note, the full school building committee did meet twice since our last meeting, And I'm happy to report that as of yesterday, the committee did vote on a finalized draft of the request for services for owner's project manager. The document itself is on our district website. It is a draft form. And what's going to happen at this point is that this draft is going to be submitted to the MSBA for their review and approval. And that once that approval is secured, the document will then be filed in the Central Register and published in several journals in the area. I think the Winsor Telegram and Gazette and something called Combites is where this document will be publicized. The estimated cost of the project we put in the OPM, our request for services is somewhere between 90 to 130 million. I would encourage all the members of this district committee to go to the website and read the document. And if you're not inclined to read the entire thing in its draft form, I would encourage you to read the first 5 pages. The first 5 sections of the document are the most telling, and it will show you where the objectives of the project lie and how we've weighted the priorities in regards to the securing of an OPM. Lastly, I do want to give due credit to the OPM search committee, which consisted of Select Board Member Robert Stakansky from Bolton, Mr. Scott Gibson of Bolton, Mr. Ken Fromer of Lancaster, and our own Patricia Marty. They did yeoman's effort in getting this document in time for the filing with the MSBA, or the review of the MSBA, and appropriate credit should be given to them. They did a great job on this, and I think it's very exciting at this point. So thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. It's exciting to see a lot going on with the building committee. I know you guys have a lot of work ahead of you, so thank you in advance for all of that. Dear Jay, we have not met. I've been doing this. And audit advisory, sounds like you guys haven't met, and we sort of got a mini update just a few minutes ago. Is that correct, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, I think Pat and I communicate regularly, and been asking. We know what the next step was, and she's sort of unable to set the committee's expectations because it sounds like her expectations haven't been set with anything concrete. So it's probably kind of a frustrating thing for her, and we'll just keep waiting.
Okay, thank you. All right, items to be considered for next agenda. Even that's a little bit of a confusing thing because you got your reorganization meeting and your superintendent interview meetings, and then you got another regular business meeting. So if anyone has things they want to throw out for any one of those meetings, we'll take them down and yeah, just keep a list. Nothing. You may need to discuss changing COVID regulations because the state is changing things left and right, and how that affects policies. And I don't even know, but it feels like something might be coming towards you. The other thing that I had written down was that the governor is ending the state of emergency as of June 15th. And one of the things that the state of emergency allowed us to do was meet virtually. And so the legislature may be taking up some of these things and may be extending some things, and nobody really knows. But as of June 15th, if everything reverts exactly back to the way it was before the pandemic, there would be no virtual meetings. And so I have feelings about that for other accessibility and transparency reasons, but that is something that you may need to address at your 6-2 meeting, or whenever your next meeting is, regular business meeting. You might need to discuss some things about that. Yeah, Todd?
I was just going to say, once the chair is selected, Elaine, I'll certainly reach out so that the chair and I can, meet to discuss, what that meeting will look like.
Okay. Thank you, Todd.
Okay.
All right. Does anybody have anything else that they wanted to put out there? Leah? No?
Sorry, my battery's dying, so I'm trying to plug in. We need to do subcommittee assignments. Did you already say that?
Yeah, that'll be part of your regular process. Your new chair should have that process down. If you have questions, Todd can certainly handle that. But if anyone needs to reach out to me or Kathy, I'm sure we'll help as well.
I know that in the past we've asked people to kind of indicate what they would like And so can that happen via email?
Yeah, so generally what happens is the chair makes the final decisions, but obviously asks for input. So people send either via email or has a phone call or meets for coffee or something like that to talk about what you're interested in, where you want to take things that you've already been working on, if you really want to stay with something or if you're looking to change something new. And then the chair tries to balance that all. We've tried in the past to do Stow, Bolton, and Lancaster on 3-person subcommittees. It doesn't always work out that way. And, then do you need an ad hoc subcommittee for the year? Do you want to cancel an ad hoc subcommittee that you've had and don't need anymore? Like there's a lot of moving pieces, just like everything else. But yeah, it usually takes like one meeting cycle to get it all set. Yeah.
Might we understand kind of the final status of the mascot situation? Because I imagine we're going to start the next year with that fully online. And I just wonder if there would be a cost analysis of it ready.
Yeah, I think that's something that you could put on a future agenda for, more updates and more progress. Because you're in a sort of like Superintendent said, in a rebranding phase right now, but then you have a logistical like changeover phase. And we've mentioned fundraising a lot, but haven't gotten down to the logistics of that either. So I'm assuming mascot update. All right, anything else? All right, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:41 p.m.
So moved.
All right, second.
Second.
All right, and I'm going to give Alita some props here because we are within 6 minutes of the stated agenda time, and that rarely happens. And that is all to her excellent estimation skills because she's the one that puts the times on all this stuff.
Elaine, who moved that?
I did.
Joe, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I will call the roll then, and as appropriate, it's my turn to start. So Elaine, yes. Leah?
Yes, ma'am.
Shawn?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes, yes.
Brett?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
And Steve?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Brooke.